Well, Jesse.
Morning.
Morning.
How are you? Is there one background or is it manageable?
It's a little bit. Yeah, there's a little bit of interference.
All right, let me turn this off. Hold on. Let's see if that works. Yes. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. How are you?
I'm okay. Just a little bit under the weather, but I'm okay overall.
Yeah.
Busy week, busy time. The news has been weird.
Yeah.
But I'm alright.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you were a little, you were recuperating, like I said yesterday, from the Neuromatch conference. I always find that when you go to a conference, it's like, even if it's online, you're absorbing so much information that you have to take a day or two to think about and reflect on it.
Yeah, and I feel like Neuromatch was I really enjoyed it once again. I'm very happy to be a part of it. But it's sort of the capstone to what was basically a 2-month period where I did basically 10 different events. And I'm very fortunate to do that because I would have been. It's so funny because many people are like, oh, I don't know what to do right now. I don't have access to things. And I happen to do. It was all online, but it was. I had a very, very busy period. And immediately before Neuromatch, I did the Complexity Weekend Hackathon with this NFA Institute, and that was a very cool experience. I think, yeah, you sort of joined that, or like with the Keybase. I didn't really know what Keybase was until then, and it was a very that's a cool feature or application, but that was just a lot of back-to-back stuff, and so I'm glad that for a little bit I don't really have anything scheduled like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know. That was I like the way you go into Slack and kind of make a log of things. I think that's very helpful for people who can't make it.
Yeah. And I've been trying to think about different ways of doing that, because there's stuff that I'm trying to record myself, and basically the great thing about being at your desktop computer, you can just take a quick screenshot and paste it there directly. And I've been at conferences before, trying to live tweet stuff or whatever. But actually, in the case of being able to use Slack, I find it just a great way to take notes, because I can go back there and it's just this log. And yeah, other people can see it too, which is a huge bonus.
Yeah.
So I'm glad for that.
Yeah. Like I said, I created a Keybase for the lab in that, on Keybase. I don't know what we're going to do with it yet. I'm thinking about different ways to use it. And I'm not a fan of I know what can happen is over time you can get a couple of different things that are sort of redundant, and then you end up using one and not the others, and then it's kind of it's confusing to the people you're collaborating with because they don't know where to go for information. So yes. I wanted to use Keybase, but I didn't want to make it like a redundancy. I wanted to kind of make it something special that would be useful in a certain way that we couldn't use Slack for, say, or something else.
Yeah, and in one sense, if I was just comparing direct features, I feel like Keybase is a big winner compared to Slack. But Slack, even with OpenWorm and everything else, Slack is sort of Slack has a big legacy component, sort of like Facebook, and just everybody's on it, and everybody's a workspace, and the fact that it's a platform is just not ubiquitous, maybe in a general sense, but in a research or teams or whatever sense. I don't like if it, like what I'm saying. If it was up to me, I probably would just use Keybase, but I don't like that's just not functional right now because of what else is going on. So
yeah. Well, Anson.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good this morning.
Jesse and I were talking about different things going on. We just did the Neuromatch, we did our Neuromatch presentations, and those are online. I think I put the links in the email, the weekly email. There were some interesting things at Neuromatch. Actually, why don't we do that first? We'll go to the, well, this isn't working as a link directly here. So why don't we do that? Actually, let me share my screen. I guess I can go through this stuff. So let me share my screen here. So it was great. The presentations I think went pretty well. Jesse had to do his like sort of on YouTube, and they couldn't stream it directly, but I think people saw it. And
yeah, it was so funny because I made the YouTube presentation much like earlier in the day, and I had no idea that to share it. It's funny because I don't know if it changed, and I remember the first time we did it, they were like encouraging us to have it either different files, and that wasn't the case this time. I actually ended up emailing Conrad directly, and he's like, oh, sorry, we're not doing that this time. So I prepared all these like contingency options, and then it turns out that because I didn't have a mic or camera on my desktop computer, which is my main thing, but it's also new, and I don't have one for that, I couldn't join and then share my screen. So not a big deal, but as I said, I think I will actually get a basic webcam computer, even though like there are a lot of workarounds for that. But,
right.
Yeah. Anyway, it did work out all right, and I'm glad that it happened, and I'm okay with the presentation. I feel like I will be able to do much better soon, but it was a good experience, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I think the Neuromatch, I mean, it was a lot of stuff, and like Jesse said, he's tired after doing 3 days of it, and I'm just tired after doing 3 days of it. So, and so it's just a lot of information at once, but it's very useful. And the thing about this type of conference is it's all recorded, so these crowdcast links, you should be able to go here and replay things in crowdcast.
Oops.
If it doesn't work if you're using like Chrome and it doesn't work, try Firefox, because I know it definitely works in Firefox. And so, I really enjoyed this first day debate, the Anthony Zador and Tim Mollecrap. That was a pretty good debate. That was on the role of learning versus innate mechanisms in AI.
Yes.
And, I think that like they're these artificial kind of debates where like they don't really disagree on a lot, but they do have like different perspectives, and I think that's useful. You might want to check this one out. Definitely, if you're interested in this issue of like how much do you have to put into an AI in order to make it be able to learn things. We talk about like learning with neural networks as if it's magic, and clearly it's not, because we have a lot of it's hard, first of all. Secondly, it's not like the things that an AI can learn are not like so much like a human as it is like associations, or there's certain classes of problems it does really well on. So think Anthony Zador, he kind of talks a little bit about like the like biological brains and like going down to the level of genes and things like that. But it's not really clear, how you get there. And so he just kind of makes the point, I think, generally that you need an innate mechanism, but doesn't say what that should look like. So that's something we might talk about in the group later this summer, or as we go on this summer, because we have some, I think, especially in conjunction with DevaWorm, we have some good opportunities to do some synergy there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm definitely interested in that with DevaWorm stuff, and I also would. It was a really interesting. It harkens back to the AI debate with Marcus and Benio,
Yeah.
which in January, which kind of was along the same lines. But I really like. I don't know. We can get to this if you're going to go here later. But at the end when they did a future Neuromatch panel, and there was kind of this review. I think the debates were one of the highest rated and most approved segments, and I really agree with that. Because even if they're artificial debates, they create and especially when they're well moderated, like most of these have been that I've seen, they really help delineate specific lines of thought and create a lot of. It's really useful for people, especially I would say younger people and those just trying to get a sense of like where things are demarcated in the field or how people are talking about stuff, because the structure then creates this very interesting context to see it. So I'm a big fan of the debates, and particularly that might have been all the ones. That one, the one on the second day, I forget what it was, but that one, the panels, those events, those parts of Neuromatch 2 were really, really good, and kind of like I'm like it makes you like this is really. Obviously, there's a lot of great talkers and speakers and things for them too, but those things are like really above and beyond for me.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was, again, if you're watching online, this link is neuromatch.io, and so this is the agenda, and the tab is up here. And so we had some other good talks. Eve Martyr, who's a complexity person, actually, or she's interested in like the brain and complexity. She had some interesting data on crustaceans and their neural networks in their stomatogastric nervous system. And it's like their gut, but it's very like we usually talk about the gut as being a mini brain, but in crustaceans, it's actually a little bit more advanced than that in terms of like its processing capabilities. So this is really interesting, kind of going in the direction of complex systems and in chaos even. Another one, where was this debate? So this is the debate, the Puget and Love debate. This is the other one that I think Jesse just talked about, the usefulness of Bayesian models. So the Bayesian model, and I don't know how familiar people are with Bayesian models, but I think it's something worth exploring here, even if it's like, I don't really have a lot of specialty in that area, but I think they're going to be talking about it a lot at Neuromatch, at the Academy. And so that's something that we'll probably talk about one way or another this summer. I did like the idea of, and we'll talk about this maybe next week. I didn't have a chance to prepare slides on it. We'll talk sort of about the the adaptive nature of Bayesian models. So a Bayesian model, is where you take you have a prior, so you observe the world, and then you evaluate the world with a certain with Bayes' rule, and then you figure out like what if your observation matches your prediction, and then you have a posterior distribution. Then you use your prior again to update your what they call beliefs, and then you have generate another a posteriori distribution. And you can use that in a lot of ways. You can use that for statistical prediction, or there might be some more interesting applications to like adaptive behavior or things like that. So I like I haven't really thought too much about Bayesian models in the recent past, but the other thing that Jesse noted was that they use the term belief.
Yeah, we had a little discussion about that, I think.
Yeah.
We brought it up.
And so, it's like the person who invented Bayes' theorem was Reverend Bayes. So maybe he was believing, he's a believer, true believer, as they say. But I think it's like the idea is that it's like, I think they're a little bit more honest about like statistical model than like the frequentists. Because you say belief, and that means essentially that you believe something to be true. And so the idea is you believe this to be true, you see data come in, and then you can make an informed decision and you can update that accordingly. And the belief is either confirmed or, not confirmed. And then, so it's like kind of like you think about hypothesis testing, that's sort of what you're doing, but you're calling it a belief. But that also brings up that, people do model beliefs themselves. And so there's a lot of stuff with, people use the term belief. I think also in Dempster-Schaefer theory, which I mentioned to Jesse, it's kind of a more obscure area, but it's something similar to a Bayesian model where they talk about beliefs. And like in this case, it's like pure statistical beliefs. So like you believe something to be true, and then you observe the world, and then it's either confirmed or denied, by what you're observing, and then that's your updated, model of the world. So in Bayesian thinking, they call it an updated prior. So it's like it's an iterative thing. It's not just like, like where you have a prior and then you apply it to this model. So, and there are a couple other things, to note about like Bayesian models, how they're different from like regular statistical models, is that they have a prior. So you have to have a good prior distribution of things in the world. But that's true of any statistical model. And you have to have some sort of like, you have to have, of course, Bayes' rule. And then you have to have a way to sort of evaluate those, and then come up with an answer in some way. I think actually Bayes' rule is applied in what's the thing we've been talking about with Friston?
Free energy principle.
Yeah, free energy principle, like that sort of that group of ideas that does use Bayes' rule a lot in that. Mm-hmm. So I think when Jesse presented, we kind of glossed over it because it is really difficult to get your head around. Aside from like the free energy principle, then there's that. But it is a factor in there.
Speaking of that, I guess there are two comments I would make. One of them is directly about that. I don't know, we mentioned Keybase before. There was a channel at the Complexity Weekend Hackathon dedicated to the free energy principle, and one of the organizers is very interested in it. I think Nathaniel, or Daniel, I forget, of the Complexity Weekend. And I was able to join a Slack channel about that with apparently a lot of people who have worked with Kristen about it before, so that'll be something to revisit again, especially if I have conversations with them about that. And about the debate in general and the models, what I really liked about outside of everything that you said, what I really liked, and something I want to, that very much is aligned with my frontier map efforts, is I personally would really enjoy seeing more debates along the lines of techniques. Like what are the pros and cons of this technique or that technique, and all of them fit along those lines anyways. That you know like the AI debate was kind of what priors are needed in deep learning, because deep learning can do this and that in the context of deep learning, it was all kind of within which end of the spectrum are you in for deep learning as a specific technique. But I like seeing, I think it's really important, and this kind of stems into some of the other discussions in some of the broader, like almost philosophy of science things that happened at Neuromatch or iClear or CSV or whatnot. But I think it's really important to have a context for not just what does a model do, but what is like the capacity for okay, Bayesian models, or okay, neural networks, okay, recurrent neural networks, like what's sort of the limitation and the context for where the models were developed, and what can they do or what can't they do. And I think it's important for someone learning about things, but it kind of fits with the same theme of open science, open code, open data, and just in a very clear way. Like, yes, you could write in a paper and say, oh well, we're using Bayesian models here because we want to do this, and we're like, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's great to, at least in my limited experience, I haven't been to many conferences for sure, but I feel like that's something that I would like to see more of and like to kind of facilitate, because a lot of times discussion just happens as in like very specific channels of, okay, well, this is the model that I'm using, or this is the technique that I'm using. And then it can be like, oh, well, everybody uses this technique is good or bad, and it's like, okay, I like that there was some nuance and some disagreement about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like you have to remember, a lot of models have assumptions, and so we don't talk about the assumptions very much, but like, certain statistical models or Bayesian models or whatever. I mean, one of the assumptions of Bayesian models, of course, is that you have a good prior. Mm-hmm. And it's like a lot of times you hear people kind of casually say, well, we'll create a prior. And prior is really important, not least of which because if it's not well sampled and it's not well characterized, then you really can't, it's not really going to work very well. Yeah, it's sort of a garbage in, garbage out. And that's true of many models where you have, like a neural network. So it's very hard to, people don't talk about them as much. It's really hard to have like a good solid grounding in the idea of what assumptions match what models. So if I go to my model zoo in my program that I'm using, and I press a button for this analysis, what is the, am I going to like get garbage out because I picked the wrong model because I didn't understand that there was I violated one of the assumptions of the model?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can talk about Neuromatch in the coming weeks. I think that's a lot of fodder, food for thought, and the academy's coming up in the near future, so we'll talk about it more then.
If I was just going to say two more things about Neuromatch, the growing up in science panel was great. I'm happy to see that being more of a thing when people talk about their real experiences. Big fan of that. And the data panel, I think that was, it's interesting because like a lot of the talk has been on data and ethics at iClear and CSV and sort of what's going into it. But the data panel really put things into context I hadn't seen before about open science and the idea of a coding paper or a data paper, as much as that's not normalized right now. It made me think. It was stuff that I hadn't really considered before, so I was happy to be exposed to that as well.
Yeah, I almost forgot about the data panel, but well, I mean, that's something we can talk about later too. I think it's of course we have an interest in open data here in IndivaWorm, so it's something that we can revisit. I think the idea of code or data paper is very useful. People don't do them as much because it's hard to find a place to publish them. But it's like if you write a technical paper or a blog post, even that's helpful. And I've done that in the past with things where you get you have an idea or you have something you've produced, an artifact. It could even be like an infographic, and you put up a blog post on it, sort of annotating it.
Yeah, I have some blog posts on the that's in the story.
So, any other thoughts about Neuromatch or?
No, there's more that could be said about things. There was one talk that I think was at Neuromatch, and it was something about. I'm trying to find it. I think it had to do with the development. It was one of the first talks, I think. Maybe it was just the debates. I don't know. I think it might have been part of the debate, or I can't seem to find this out. That's it. There's a lot that could be said about all this. I think we've spent a lot of time on it, but we can keep coming back to it as necessary. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyways, yeah, we can talk about it on Slack, even just if there's something insight that you think of, like when you're thinking about things. Next thing I wanted to move to, let's see. So I talked about last week. I talked about our MetaBrain. Actually, let's go to the task board first. I'm going to bring my screen back up. And the task board is here. And so Jesse's been populating it with a lot of tasks. I've been putting tasks up. Let's see, that's not right. And this is the task board here. So this is the board. I think for this repository, MetaBrain Models, I wanted to point this out real quick. I've invited people to be collaborators on this. And so how can Jesse put issues up on the board? And the answer is that I have invited people to be collaborators on this repository. So if this thing works here, it'll come up to settings and manage access. And I have Jesse as a collaborator, and I've invited Anson. And I guess it sends you an email. And so, of course, it's going to ask for my password. And so I don't know if Anson got the email, but it's pending this invite. So Anson maybe can check his email and make sure that it's there. And then just, I think you may even be able to log on to GitHub directly and accept the invite.
Yeah, I actually found it a lot easier to find just in my messages, wherever it is, because then you just click on the message there. I think actually my GitHub is sent to my old email, so I might need to update that. But You can just do it in your messages.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then that enables us to like assign tasks or to make tasks if we want. So this is the board. We have a bunch of things here that are kind of, well, we should review them at least. So this Neuromatch Academy application that's completed, CSV ethics presentation that's completed, ICLR presentation is completed, Neuromatch presentations and review that's completed, and this virtuality presentation that's completed. So then we go to in progress. So these boards are divided into to do, hold, in progress, and completed. And the idea is that if you want to create a task, you go to do, and you enter in a note like sample task, and then you add it in, and then you can go to these little dots here, click on that, and convert to issue. And now you have an active issue here. And the active issue, then you can leave it in to do, or you can move it over to another category just by grabbing it and pulling it. So now I put it in progress, which is it's a dummy task, so I don't care where it goes. But if you're going to do it soon, you might put it in hold. If you put it in progress, it means you've done something and you're kind of working on it. We might move something back into hold if it's something that we don't know how we're going to do it yet. And then completed is when it's done. So anything associated with Neuromatch 2.0 is in this category. This is sample task in progress. Let's say I didn't do what I wanted to do last week, so I'll put it back in hold. That's the way it works. And then I can assign people. So if I go into the task like this, here's the task opened up. You just click on the name of the task. And then you have this thing, assignees, underneath the description. And so if you click on this wheel, I can assign 2 people right now. And then and usually this is me, orthogonal research, but sometimes I use my personal GitHub for this too. Depends on how we want to assign it in the group. And then if I assign it, say, to orthogonal, then I've done that, and then I go back out and I look at the task, and there's this little icon, which is the icon for the account. So that's how you assign things. And I'll just remove that so we don't get confused as to what that is. So that's how our task board works. And so let's see what we've got here. So why don't we go from in progress and then go back left. So in progress, flesh out a general project timeline.
Yeah, I have thought about that a little bit, and I think, given that I don't know if I'm going to be accepted to the intensive track for Neuromatch. I'd like to think I will be, but I think, given that that's sort of a 3-week intensive period at the middle of July to the end, I feel like I think what I will be doing is just create a timeline or a strategy between now and basically the middle of July, because I think from what it sounds like, that's going to be an open period for me to do things. And really make some progress. There's been a lot of other stuff going on, and it hasn't been. I've been enjoying all the things I've been doing, but it hasn't really been lab work, and I want to get to a place where I'm doing lab work and developing my project more, so that way I can, make actual progress with it. So I feel like that's the next timeline actual barrier is going to be Neuromatch stuff, because even if I'm only in the non-intensive track, so that's kind of my own thing. It's not, I wouldn't say it's done yet, but that's definitely, as a general update on that task, that's what it's about. And even it might even potentially affect Anson and whatever he's doing as well, because it could be everybody right now is going to be at Neuromatch, so that would be huge, but also something to plan around. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, and then I have, and I'm going to get this in a bit. It's definitely I did come up with some more development on this. Let's see, which task was this? Oh, this 13. So actually, why don't I go to 13 now? Talk about it a little bit, and then we'll talk about it later. So map RGB color space to a set of receptive fields. And so this is kind of cryptic as its issue, but actually come up with some different, like what I've done is I've walked through this with Anson and Jesse, and then we're going to kind of discuss how we might get to the, attack the problem or whatever. So we'll take this 13 and we'll split it up into multiple issues over time. And then we'll work on 12, but 12 will be later. 13 is the first one. So this task number 1, that's in progress. This is going to be on hold until we kind of split it up into new tasks. And then 13, and then 12 is going to wait. But, and so, let's see. I think, well, okay, what about finish ABM coursework?
Yeah, that's definitely still in progress. And excuse me. But I might move this to the bottom of the list and this one above it. That's in progress, but it hasn't. Not much has happened in the last week, basically. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the agent-based model?
I'm sorry? Yes.
Agent-based model, okay.
This is the net logo work with Santa Fe Institute, Complexity Explorer. And it's something that in the to-do, I definitely want to do a little presentation on this, but I'm not quite done yet, and the coursework is in progress on my end, but it's been on hold basically this week, so.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll put it on hold, because it has been on hold, but yeah.
By the way, I've been poking GitHub. How do I add the repository? I can't find.
Go to your messages. Where is that? Oh, notifications. Try the upper right corner where the bell icon is. If you go there,
yeah.
you probably will find some notifications, and it might take you to it.
That's weird. I don't see it.
You don't see anything in that area?
Nope.
I'm sure there's an actual thing, but you know.
Maybe like as a time limit, and if you're in the response early enough.
No, I don't think so, because I forgot mine a lot.
Inbox. No notification.
So, Anson,
it's not in your inbox?
What is your handle for GitHub?
Anson Z Lim. So ANSON Lim LI.
Okay.
Lim.
Yeah, I think I did make I did invite the right account. I was afraid that I might not have gotten it, but I think it was. Let's see, manage access.
We'll check.
Yeah, right here. So I don't know.
Yeah. So I don't know why
Do
this seems.
you have to verify your account still? Like, do you have to, like, maybe it's because your account isn't verified. I know it's new, but,
Maybe I'll. Huh. I will.
yeah, we can sort it out later.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
I don't know if I can re-invite you, but I don't know why. Yeah, it doesn't give me any more information on this end, but
We can work with that later.
yeah, we can work with that offline. Yeah, I don't know what the details of that are. Usually, it just sends you like a message in your email. I don't know beyond that what it does, but
Yeah.
so yeah, we'll figure that out though, and so that'll be for like assigning tasks and so forth. So then we have this complexity weekend hackathon. Like Jesse said that he wanted to present on a couple things. So why don't yeah.
For the complexity weekend, I'm not sure there's enough to really give much of a presentation about it. Like, it was a very good experience, and I ended up working with a team that is still somewhat together. We basically were working on information transmission, and it kind of got filtered, or misinformation transmission related to COVID-19. It kind of got filtered into analyzing tweets, analyzing social media network data. And one of the people there actually is working in NetLogo and agent-based modeling, and I'm trying to kind of help them with that. But there really isn't. There's not much I can show right now, and
yeah.
As you know, I've had a lot of things in my plate, so I haven't really been able to do that. But I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure if I should just move on from that or put that on hold as well, because there may be something that I come back to that with it. But yeah,
why don't we put it in hold?
Yeah.
And then we'll do that, and then maybe like the blog posts as well for different things, and that'll just be like in hold until we get to it. It's fine. Things can stay in hold for a while. It's just kind of keeps your attention on it.
Yeah.
Then we have this other thing, ALIFE Devo NN workshop, and that is this thing here. So this is something that it's the ALIFE 2020 conference, and it's coming up in July. And people watching online here might be interested in doing this. This is like the kind of in line with what we were doing with Bratenberg vehicles last summer. The idea is they're interested in approaches, sort of developmental approaches to neural networks. So it's a pretty open, like free-form type of thing. And I need to inquire about like the format and things like that. But I think it's definitely something that the abstract submission is about 2 weeks from now. Definitely something that I'm going to try to work on with other people this week. And then at next week's meeting, we'll kind of go over it. And I don't know if there's another meeting before the abstract deadline, but maybe we'll try to put something together for this. It feels like there's a real opportunity here. It's a 2 to 4 page extended abstract, so it's probably a pretty easy thing to do. And I think these are the links to the the previous workshops in the series. So let me put this link in the chat. And I mean, it's something that we'll probably just follow up on the developmental Bratenberg vehicles idea. So it's not going to be anything I don't think too radical, but definitely the people in this community will not have seen this before. So
it sounds like that's kind of the next thing event-wise for us to do, and I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
I was looking at the ALIFE conference in general, which seems very cool, but not sure if I'm able to do the whole conference, but I'm definitely on board with that workshop and trying to do something with that workshop.
Yeah. I have the link there already. Okay. So, yeah, definitely if you're interested in that, contact me on Slack, or I'll be in contact on Slack when I'm getting things together for people. So we'll talk about that more in the coming week or two. But I wanted to get to this before we end the meeting because time is going by pretty fast here. Let's see, where are we? Let me go back to the main repository. So we'll kind of go over this board on a regular basis. So this is the MetaBrain Models repository, and I don't know if you're familiar with BrainWeb, but this is a collaborative group. Let me see if I can get the link here. That is working on sort of these collaborative projects. I think I've shown this in a previous lab meeting. This is where you can join this group and you can become like a collaborator, and there are a bunch of projects you can collaborate on. So this is a neuroscience-based collaborative network. And what I've done is I've created a tab in the project repo here called BrainWeb, along with some other tabs, and it's just editing this part of the repo. You can add these tabs, but what this tab does is it puts it on this list of projects. So if I go to BrainWeb and I go to projects, now the project is advertised as a project. So people will come to this website. There's a growing community here, probably over 100 people by now, at least. And they want to collaborate on these open source projects. So there are a lot of different projects going on right now. And we are in this group. I don't know where we are here exactly. Here we are. So we're right in the mix here. And
nice.
Yeah, so it's advertised here as an issue. I don't know how to put an image. This is actually Stefan Dvoratsky's project. You know, our person who comes to the meetings here. This is his project. Yeah. He's doing this stuff with the EEG and deep learning. So congrats to Stefan. This is MetaBrain Models. This is ours. So you just go and you click on this. It goes into the repo, which is right here. And then it allows people to, follow it or contribute in some way. So, yeah, I mean, that's good. We have some exposure there.
Yeah, I'm very big with the Stefan's project. It's very cool, and I have contributed a little bit to. Framework started out with like I think their 3-day hackathon opening stuff, and I worked on the the neuroimaging, basically like a repository for learning how to do neuroimaging stuff. It's very congruent with Frontier Map. I'm actually learning some things from that for Frontier Map. So
good. Yeah.
I'm glad that our project's MetaBrain's on there now too. That's great.
Yeah. So, like I said, I've been adding to this repository. I've been adding directories here, and so the one I wanted to focus on today was the CGS folder, and then we have all these different things, and so I've been kind of putting up things that I have in my records about this. Time representations, the n-grams approach, which we tried 2 years ago. But then there's this thing, color data set. And this is the thing I was talking to Anson about. So this is the color data set. And so I have a couple of folders in here. Well, first of all, I have these links to, I remember, I think last week we talked about the different color spaces. And I have links to different examples of those. And then that open source semantic map of color names. There's a link to that. So we have all of those basic links. And then we have these two folders, Color World and Receptive Fields. So the first one is Receptive Fields. And if we go into this repository, and let me give you the link to this so you follow along on your own computer. This, you have to go to the README to like see. I mean, you can see it here, but what I'll do in these READMEs is I'll put in like figures as I generate them in text, and then we'll have a readable document, like a sort of documentation. Right now we just have an image here, but we can add things later. So what this is it's so this is the color space here, and these are RGB values for color. And so what we have here are some receptive fields for different colors. And so this is one of the ways what we want to do here is we want to take that color space, like say the RGB color space, and we want to map it to a set of values that are sort of extracting information out of this color. And so we have the RGB value for the color here. And then we have different cones or different receptors for different parts of the color. So in this case, we have an R, a G, and a B. And what we've done in each case, this number here, it corresponds to taking each of these numbers, each of these components of the RGB value, and figuring out like what proportion of the maximum this represents. So the R value here is 121. Well, we know the R channel is an 8-bit channel, so it has 256 states. If you take 121 divided into 256, you get 47 or 47%. And so that's what we have here. And so we do this for each number, and we've mapped it from this color space to these three receptors. And then now that we have this, what they call a three-tuple or triplet, we can then do things here. I put a summation sign here, but we can do things like combine them or average them or sum them up and get like a signal that's unique maybe to that color. In this case, we have a little of a different configuration. This is where we have a panel of 3 different colors. And so these receptors are receiving information from these 3 colors. And what we're doing here is we're averaging across these 3 colors. And then they're not like, it's not a gradient, a uniform gradient. It's just 3 colors I picked that look like a gradient. But we're averaging out the value for each of these channels. So the R receptor will take 7, 2, and 4. The average of that divided into 256, and that's 0.03. And so we do the same thing for these. And so the idea is that you would take like a color, you would find calculate, you basically write a short program that would take each receptor. The receptor would have rules, so extract the red component out of this color, tell us what the like sort of a value is relative to like the maximum value in that channel, and then return. I mean, we can play with the rules, how they're implemented and what they are, but this is just a quick example. So that's receptive fields. Now, what about this? This doesn't really make sense until we get into color world, which is actually more interesting. So what do we do with our receptive field information? So this is our README for this. And this has a few more figures. So this is what we can do with this is we can incorporate this into like a Bratenberg vehicle. And as you can see, there are 3 different color sensors on the front of the Bratenberg vehicle, each responding to red, green, and blue. And now we have this array of colors. So now it's going to observe all the colors. And in the last instance, I said we're going to just average across this gradient and find a mean color. And then that's what it's going to be mapped to into the vehicle, into the internal model of this vehicle, is going to be that value. But maybe it's not as simple as that. Maybe we want to know, like, we want to distinguish in space where the color is, what specific colors are for specific areas, and so forth. Because remember, these vehicles move around their environment. And so I've coined a term here, chromotaxis, which is attracted to a specific color. And so in normal Bratenberg vehicles, we use something called phototaxis, which are simple attraction and repulsion to light sources. So if I shine a light, the Bratenberg vehicle will either move towards it or repel from it. And so, but in this case, what we're doing is we're actually using maybe something like that. We're saying if there's a certain color, we want the vehicle to move towards that color. And also, there's a preference for that color. So we want to maybe assign an emotional valence to that color. Like, we want it, for example, if there's a purple color, maybe we want the vehicle to respond favorably. Or if there's a blue color like this, we want it to avoid it for some reason. It's how these differ is going to be a subject of later. We'll deal with that later. But let's just suffice it to say these are two separate things. So
yeah, well, that's interesting to think about it in terms of this is a nice. I know Anson may not really have the background for it yet, but for me, like this is a really nice. This is a nice link between CGX and Bratenberg vehicles because you could even get to a place of attaching an emotion, which is like some of the original Bratenberg vehicles would run into love or hate, or fear or aggression. Like you could see purple is a love, and so it'll approach it very softly, and it's sort of an interesting way of combining the representation layers, but then also tagging them to specific behavioral states.
Yeah. Well, I have some other things here that I didn't want to really get too much into, but this is so. The reason I'm showing you all this is so you have a good idea of why we're doing this. So then, if we think about space, we actually have a bigger, a little larger set of values that we need to account for. So it would be the colors, the color components, but also the spatial location. And then the sampling density, that's another thing we have to think about is for the space, is that for each channel, we're sampling different color components, but it's not like uniform across the color spectrum. So like for green, it's a mixture of all three, of course, but in that green channel, we're sampling 4 points, and they're not uniform, of course. And you shouldn't expect them to be uniform because you encounter different colors, you encounter different color value or different component values, and so on. So this is something we need to sort of take into account as well. But I think for Anson, or a couple of starting tasks, maybe we'll walk through this receptive field model. We can't get to it this week, obviously, but I want, and I didn't have time to prepare like an exercise or like a way we might represent this in a table or whatever. But I think this is what we're going to do for this part of the summer is we're going to work on this model, kind of mapping. For one thing, we're going to map these colors to maybe like some receptive fields and like come up with some instances of like we're going to come up with some instances where the receptive fields are taking in different colors and mapping them to a set of values. And we'll figure out what that looks like once we get that into tables. And then color world, I think, comes into play there where we look at the sampling densities. So now each of those receptive fields are taking in like a red component, a green component, and a blue component of those colors that it gets presented with. And we have to build distributions now. So now, they're pretty non-normal distributions, obviously. But the idea would be to like generate some colors at random maybe, and then, decompose it with our receptive fields, and then build a distribution of the different color channels. And that would be probably a good first step. And then we would like create like a maybe like a pseudo data set where we'd have that data there, and then we can look at it because when you do a lot of this stuff with simulation, you have to sort of calibrate it. You have to get a sense of what the world looks like. I'm trying to make a world that's like somewhat realistic, but I also want to characterize the world a bit more for the vehicles and for other models that we're doing. So
That sounds good. We wish I had more to say, but I need my hands like in it before I have more to say.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just kind of doing this by the seat of my pants in terms of getting like this stuff out. I wanted to create a structured activity though, so that you could get a good experience, get your hands dirty in the sort of modeling world, and then create. This is a data science thing as well, so if this is going to be like a pseudo data set, it's going to be like from color data, but it's going to be it's just going to be sort of a bunch of artificial instances. In the real world, you're going to see a lot of different colors, but this is going to be like where we just create a synthetic world where there are different colors, and we'll figure out how to present it. And as we go along, we'll map it. It'll seem really abstract at first, and you don't know why you're doing it. It's going to be really weird, but later on, you're going to see how this like generalizes to things in the world, and it's gonna look a lot more clear in terms of why we're doing this and the usefulness of it.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the best way to do this, we'll do this in the meetings. We'll I'll work on some of the creating the stimulus and that, and then we'll work through some of the things in the meetings. The reason I want to walk you through it is because I want you to be able to experience it, but I don't want to make you throw a lot of things on you and say, because I don't know what I imagine you really haven't had much experience with like doing like kind of like doing your own project where you have to like figure out which end is up. And it's not the easiest thing in the world, and you shouldn't throw people into things like that. I don't believe. I think the best way to learn is to have like a kind of like go through it step by step, and then if once you're really into it, then you can like, okay, I have this idea to improve it. So that's the way we're going to approach it. I think it's a good way to do it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm still wrapping my head around complex geometric structures myself, so I'm going to benefit a lot from going through that.
Yeah, I think you did a good job, Jesse, on in the presentation. So yeah, I mean, it's like something that is been kind of working on it for about 7 or 8 years, kind of like different, not all full time, but just kind of as I've gotten to it and other people have gotten to it, and just kind of like figuring out what it is. Then this is why I want to do this in the MetaBrain project, is because I think if you have like some, and that's why I do a lot of these sketches, is because I think it's useful to put together like little scenarios and things like that to really kind of sketch out how something might work, instead of like trying to implement something and then have it break. And really, because conceptually it's hard. It's like if you're trying to characterize culture and trying to characterize a high level representation and then make it work in the real world, or you really have to attack it from multiple angles. So anyways, so I would encourage you, if you want to read more about this, to go through the repository. There are a bunch of other things in here, but I'd focus on CGS. You might focus on some of these other repositories. Some of them are not really fully fleshed out yet. Some are So if you have any ideas, you can issue a pull request to, update some of the materials, or maybe if you want to add your own materials, you can create a folder that has, like you would do in the same format that I showed you for the color space examples, where you create a README, and then you put in maybe some images and links, and then you put everything in the README so that someone can go there and read through it like a document. And it's just like putting it in Markdown and like inserting the images as image elements. And if you don't know how to do that, you can go to one of the existing READMEs and look at how it's sort of like you have HTML elements in there for different things. And it's a good way to, like, if someone visits the repository, to go in and see exactly what's going on as documentation. Okay.
Yeah, and like there's stuff. It took me a while to get used to Markdown, so
Yeah.
I'll be able to talk about that too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's past the top of the hour, but that's probably okay. I hope everyone is out there watching, or if you're in the meeting here, hope everyone's doing safe and doing well and staying safe and everything. And if you don't have any, does anyone have any other comments or questions they want to address before we go?
Just specifically for next week, I think I'm going to create a bit of a timeline and have that set. I think outside of what did we say it was? The workshop, the Devo and workshop.
Yeah.
I don't have any. I'm going to kind of be taking a break from. I've been doing so many events, so I'm looking forward to kind of being back in the lab and fleshing this out. So my goal for next week will be that, and probably working on some of the color field stuff, and potentially, like I kind of want to take this next week to establish a timeline and maybe get some effort on some of the things that I have in hold, whether it's the coursework or the blog posts or whatever. I hope to have. Basically, want the timeline to be done, or at least up to July for next week, and some of those other projects that hold for me to be in progress or completed. So that's what I'm setting out to do.
Okay, that sounds good. And then, how are you doing, Anson?
I think I'll Jesse message me about after this. We'll poke through why I'm not getting the repository invite, but after that I'll poke through the repository CGX files and look at some background establishing information. Hopefully next week we can talk through like a basic exercise and talk more.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right.
Yeah. The only other things that I would mention right now are just like for more down the road events. I think I mentioned that Organized for Human Brain Mapping Brain Hackathon, but I think that you said that's neuroimage based.
Yeah, it is.
So exactly. I might look at that, but I don't think I'm going to be doing much with that. Any life conference is in mid-June. I'm looking at I've created a list. One of my friends has got me into Notion, which is like a database planner that you can turn in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And I have a list of events here, so I'm going to put that on there. There's also International Conference on Machine Learning, which is sort of like International Conference on Learning Representations, apparently. Or at least it's like very similar in how it's set up and managed. And I may try to volunteer for that too, but that's in July. I wouldn't be a major thing, but just putting that on the radar. And there's JuliaCon, and I don't know if that's more something for Diva Warm, but I think I definitely want to look. That came up at Neuromatch, I think, Julia.
Yeah.
So I want to look more to that.
Yeah, Stefan is a big fan of Julia.
Yeah.
So that'll be good.
And I guess the last note is that the MIT Brains, Minds, and Machines summer school has been both canceled and not canceled. Like the in-person component is not active this year. But there is a virtual component to it.
Right.
There were a couple emails about it, and I did get into it, but it's sort of like, I don't know if I should say, I just got into it and we're doing the online version, or it was canceled and I'm doing something else. But that seems to be happening as well, and that'll be in August. But that's the far distant outlook, and I'm very curious to see where the projects we're on now will be in 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, well, congrats on getting into the MIT thing. I mean, it'll be. I think it'll be the online component will be probably. I mean, I don't think they'll waste your time with anything. I mean, it's MIT based, so it should be fun.
Yeah, and like Neuromatch, it's been interesting because Neuromatch has been so new and flash in the pan and out of nowhere, but it seems a little more stable, and there's really stuff going on with them, and I'm very happy for that. But yes, MIT, Harvard, whatever, Brains, Mind, Machine collaborative is prestigious, but they had a really nice cognitive science focus as well.
Yeah.
So I was really looking forward to that component of it, and hopefully between, they don't to be like back to back necessarily, but between Neuromatch Academy, which hopefully I think we'll definitely be in one way or another, at least like in the observer track.
Yeah.
But if I'm able to get into the intensive stuff, there's probably going to be it's going to be like an intensive month and a half of stuff that'll be really important for me to know. So that'll be great.
Good.
That's it. That's more than enough.
Okay. Yeah. You were going to say something?
I found the email, so I found the email that has the link for me to add the repository. So I click that, so it should be added now.
Okay.
Oh,
We'll check after the meeting, so that's good. Okay. Well, thanks for showing up, guys, and attending, and talk to you guys next week.
Yeah, thanks. See you then.
All right, see you then.